Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Akshat Maini and I'm a research assistant at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure and honor to extend a warm and humble welcome to all to another edition of the ICS's Wednesday seminar titled The Future of Cross-Strait Relations Under a Second Trump Presidency, Taiwan's Imperatives and Options. Before we proceed, I would like to make a small announcement. Unfortunately, Mr. Ashok Kanta has come down with a viral infection and will not be able to join us today. On behalf of the ICS, we wish Mr. Kanta a speedy recovery. We are pleased to announce that Dr. Ravi Prasad Narayanan, Associate Professor, Center for East Asian Studies, JNU, will chair today's seminar. The 2024 Taiwanese presidential election resulted in Lai Ching-te of the Democratic Progressive Party assuming office. Despite holding a majority in the legislature, the opposition coalition has not enjoyed strong support from the public. Lai's foreign policy largely aligns with his predecessor, Tsai Ing-wen, which emphasizes closer ties with the United States and strengthening connections with new Southbound Policy nations. However, his relations with pro-independence factions introduces uncertainty into domestic policies, potentially providing Beijing with justification for economic or military coercion. The re-election of Donald Trump in the US will mark a shift in US-Taiwan relations, transitioning from an ideologically grounded partnership to one rooted in pragmatic interests. While the incoming US government and the DPP government share common criticisms against the PRC, US support for Taiwan security will likely bear a more significant cost for Taipei. Taipei needs to credibly signal its commitment to self-defense through defense initiatives and trade connect concessions, which constrain its policy autonomy. Despite these changes, the triangular deterrence relations among US-Taiwan-China remains largely unchanged. The primary concern for stability in the Taiwan Strait hinges on Washington's ability to reassure Beijing. Taiwan will remain a flashpoint in US-China relations, though it may not escalate militarily compared to other contentious issues between the two powers. The seminar will explore the future course of cross-strait relations amid regime change in Taiwan and the USA as well. The speaker for today's session is Professor Chan Ping-hui, Professor, Department of Diplomacy and Director, Center for India Studies, College of International Affairs, National Chungcheong University, Taiwan. He currently serves as the Executive Director of the In-Service Master Program on Strategy and International Affairs. He also directs the Center for India Studies at NCCU. Professor Chan received his PhD from the Department of Government and Politics, University of Maryland, College Park. His research interests include conflict studies, security alliance, deterrence, and coercive bargaining. He also has an interest in the governance of fintech issues. In addition to his expertise on US-Taiwan relations, he has also focused attention to South Asian affairs. The seminar will be chaired by Dr. Ravi Prasad Narayanan, Associate Professor, Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. His teaching and research interests focus on China, its foreign policy, economic reforms, and pedagogies explaining China. International relations and theories explaining state behavior motivate his research and publications. At the JNU, he has taught MPhil and PhD along with MA students and was earlier an associate research fellow with the Institute of International Relations, National Chungcheong University, Taipei, from 2009 to 2015. Prior to that, he was with the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, New Delhi, from 2003 to 2009. His book, titled Decision Making in Foreign Policy and India-China Bilateral Relations, was published in 2022. Now, before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to please follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may also use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akshat. I'm happy that Professor Chan Ping-hui has come from National Chungcheong Taipei, Taiwan, and he'll be giving us a talk on what I would say is are trilateral: Taiwan, United States, and China. Yes, trilateral, I say very comfortably, as the book you had mentioned earlier that I had written, it has a chapter where I've argued that being a member of WTO makes Taiwan a country. And when it trades with China, it is not a rebellious province conducting trade with the mainland, but two members of WTO. At the same time, we have to realize that within the WTO, you also have Hong Kong, Kong, and Macau. Now, which means there are four countries from this particular part of the world who are members of WTO. Coming to what I had said earlier, the trilateral, the United States, I think, still plays a very important role in deciding the contours of cross-strait relations. Professor Chen will tell us what exactly are these contours and how is Taiwan navigating its relations when it comes to trade and political affairs with the mainland and also with the United States. And with Donald Trump taking over next month as president for the second time in the US, how are relations going to be? Will it be continuous or will it be intermittent? Because we should not forget, before I give the floor to Professor Chen, we should not forget that when the United Nations was established, the first member state that signed the UN Charter was the Republic of China. The US was fashionably late. They waited for France and UK to sign, and then they were the fourth to sign. And as we all know, number 4 is not a very good number in the Chinese world. And the US was hesitant, which I can ask later as a question. So here we have the wisdom of Professor Chan before us. He'll explain to us the contours, as I had said earlier, of relations between the three and the role of elected governments in Taiwan. The floor is yours, Professor Chan.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Professor Nagarayam. And I would like to thank ICS for giving me this opportunity to present in this famous Wednesday seminar. I have known this seminar for a while, and I feel privileged to be part of it. Today, I'm going to talk about the future of cross-strait relations under the second Trump presidency. So it is basically a policy analysis on what would happen in the future of the, like you said, the triangular relationship between the US, Taiwan, and China. So a little bit about myself. So right now I'm in charge of the Center for India Study at College of International Affairs, National Cheng Kung University. You can see we have a new logo here on the bottom left. So my center is endeavor to gather several intelligent scholars in Taiwan who are interested in India. And we form a very, very small social community of social scientists that we try to engage with the Indian counterparts. So I hope in the future we will have more chance to engage with each other. Okay, today I'm going to talk about three things. First, I will introduce the political landscapes in Taiwan. What is happening right now in Taiwan politically? Second, I will talk about the incoming Trump presidency and what it would mean to Taiwan. And there we can take a look at the outlook for the US-China-Taiwan relations. what will happen, what should we pay attention. So we know that in the earlier this year, the election result in Taiwan elected the Lai Ching-te and Xiao Meiqing as president and vice president. So DPP continued for the first time. There is a party in Taiwan who got elected for 3 times in a row. Okay, this is interesting because no party has done that before. It was also like 8 years DPP and 8 years KNT, and right now DPP finally has its third term, consecutive terms. But however, you can see in a Congress, the election results is that the KMT and the Taiwan People's Party get a majority in the Congress. So KMT naturally co-op with the TPP to go against the DPP. So DPP is a slightly minority in the legislative yuan right now. That creates a political context in Taiwan. So the rise of the TPP, of course, is a major phenomenon in Taiwan's political landscape. So let's take a look at what is the party identification in Taiwan right now. On the left, you can see this is the very good public opinion result done by the Election Study Center at NCCU. Starting from 2019, you can see the support rate for TPP has been growing. And the support rate for KNT, which is the blue line, is declining, whereas the DPP support rate has been reasonably high. On the right side, you can see it's a public opinion poll done by the Taiwanese Public Opinion Foundation. This is the best data I can get, even though might not be the best data because the public opinion poll changes every few months, right? So next month there might be changes, but you can see from 2023 to 2024, the TPP usually takes about 12% of the support rate, and KNT takes about 24%. So altogether, you can see KNT joins TPP, they can counter the DPP's political power. Okay, so what would that result in? So first of all, it creates a standoff in Congress. There are fierce party competition within the Congress. KNT and TPP and DPP are always arguing with each other, sometimes use violence. So it was not pretty. Actually, a couple of days ago, there was another fight over a legislature, over a bill. Okay, so it was not pretty. But the fact is, it shows that the DPP have a hard time to control the Congress. As a party in power, it faces strong competition, strong contacts from the opposition parties. However, there's one thing that I would like to draw your attention to. That is the corruption case of the TPP's leader, Ko Wen-je. Ko Wen-je is currently in jail for a suspicion for corruption charges, and the result will soon come out, maybe just in a few days. So if Ko Wen-je got convicted, it will have a heavy blow on the TPP. So essentially, it may change the party identification or party support in Taiwan. And DPP may be able to gain uphand in this party competition. So this is something that we will pay attention closely. On the other hand, because the legislators will be in power for 3 years, so the basic combination or basic competition within the legislative yuan will not change for the time being. So this is what happens in Taiwan. The new DPP government, just as Aksha introduced, follows China's foreign policy. So the new Southbound Policy sometimes still got mentioned, which means India is still an important target of our foreign policy. Now, does that mean new Southbound Policy is the main foreign policy that Taiwan cares about? As far as I will argue, the relations with the US is always the priority. As you can imagine, the US is an important ally and friend to Taiwan. The relations with Japan might be the second, and the relations with new southbound countries would also take some priority, but probably would not pass Japan and the US. So in the next few years, I do hope that our government will pay more attention and distribute more resources to Taiwan-India interaction. So maybe as an academic that we will have more resources to interact. The close relations, like during the Tsai Ing-wen's administration, it remained frozen. Beijing and Taipei both established their own terms to open dialogues. So basically, Beijing says if you do not accept 92 consensus, there's nothing that we can discuss about. And Taipei says 92 consensus is bad. We want equal. We want dignity. Unless you can promise that, we do not have dialogue. So the official dialogue between Beijing and Taipei is unfortunately zero, almost none. None of the channels are working. So Beijing is trying to guess what Taipei is doing, and the same goes to Taipei. Taipei is also trying to guess what happens in Zhongnanhai. Now, the government is trying to stop any engagement between Taiwan and mainland China, especially on the official level. So recently, just this couple of days, Taipei and Shanghai is going to have a twin city forum in Taipei, and the government really attempted to block this forum. But the forum is still going on, so they still invite officials from Shanghai. However, some of the delegation members were denied entrance to Taiwan. So under this situation, Taiwan has no means to balance against or have a dialogue with mainland China, which means Taiwan needs security commitment more than ever. Under this situation, Taiwan will only have to rely on either itself or rely on the US. So there are no third parties that Taiwan can rely on. Okay. Now, so we know that POA still have threat. We still have daily flyover. We still have patrols and sometimes drills. So this is the drills during December. During October, the 2024 联合利剑 2024B. So this was as you can see, the exercise surrounded Taiwan. So this is of course intended to intimidate Taiwan. So you have to understand every time China try to do military threats, it is trying to impact the people in Taiwan, and therefore it can impact the party competition in Taiwan. And China right nowadays can gather forces and conduct drills within a fairly short period of time. It can happen anytime. So Taiwan would have to counter it and prepare to counter it anytime. So a lot of people we're talking about whether this is just a paper tiger, whether it is an imminent threat that can always become a military invasion. Well, even though the chances of outright invasion is pretty low, I would say, but it is not a paper tiger. Every time China is trying to show muscles, it has some strategic purpose. It tries to intimidate Taiwanese people, and still it is very effective. Also, it is also these exercises also try to test the US commitment to Taiwan. So right now, the PLA can quickly gather forces and try to do the things it wants in order to understand the movement of Taiwan's government and the movement of Washington. Okay. This is another example. This happens in the past couple of days. So PLA established a reserved airspace zones. It didn't say what it wanted to do. So there was no military drills, no exercises. However, we do detect there several unusual naval activities in those areas. So people are saying this is a response to Lai Ching-te's trips to the U.S. and the South Pacific diplomatic allies. This is unlikely to be the case, okay? Because if China tried to punish Lai Ching-te by doing exercises, they will announce the exercise. However, this time China said nothing, and there were no live drills and no announcement about what China tried to do for those reserved airspace zones. So what would happen for after Trump got in the administration? This is, I think, the picture on the right can tell the story here. Basically, if Taiwan wants the U.S. to support its security, Taiwan wants protection, it needs to show the money. And you can see TSMC is a big sticker on the machine. So what is the interesting thing here? So if you remember, the DPP and Democrats, the Biden administration, it was the first time DPP and Democrats partner each other. It was the first time that DPP dealt with a Democrat in the House, and their partnership was incredibly well. The liberal progressive ideology really helped to consolidate their relations. So the politicians and the officials in the US government actually really admired Tsai Ing-wen's administration for what she has done in Taiwan's politics. So what about Trump's GOP? What if Trump got back and this time it is DPP plus Republican, and they are ideologically somewhat different. So this is why people are always talking about these two people, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State to be, and Michael Waltz, National Security Advisors to be, because they have showed their anti-China perspectives or their friendliness to Taiwan. So you will see people arguing that the second Trump presidency will not be bad for Taiwan because you have higher level officials in the US government who are willing to support Taiwan. That might be true. That might be true. During Trump's first presidency, we actually have seen a lot of high level officials who are supportive to Taiwan. And their support to Taiwan actually translated into policy. So these people might be able to encourage Trump to adopt more pro-Taiwan policy, maybe. But a couple of days ago, just in December 13, this news came out, and it was so interesting. So this is the former U.S. National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien. He was helping the Taiwanese government to deliver Lai Ching-te's letter to Trump to congratulate his inauguration. So the think tank Global Taiwan Institute invited him to speak at GTI a couple of days ago, and he commented on Trump's presidency. He said, Trump also looked at Taiwan and sees rich people, and he sees Taiwan as a very rich country. Well, he's certainly not talking about me, right? But following this logic, you can see what Trump wants from Taiwan. It wants money. It was so plain and simple. It wants money. It doesn't care about the democratic value. It doesn't care about whether Taiwan is a democracy that was defending. It doesn't care about whether Taiwan is strategically important. It cares about whether Taiwan can contribute to U.S. interest. And this is very important because we know that Trump is full of uncertainty. Sometimes when something he said might not be fulfilled when he is in place, but something is certain, that he would not easily commit to anything. In his recent interview by NBC on December 9th, he refused to commit to defending Taiwan. And he even denied that commitment twice with the host. And he said he hoped she doesn't attack Taiwan. And he said that he can negotiate with Beijing about their differences. So it's not specifically about Taiwan, but you might think that Taiwan may be one of these issues. Now, but before this interview, Trump actually did talk to Xi. They had a phone. They had a phone. They had to have a talk on the phone, and he did not mention about Taiwan. So you can see what kind of places Taiwan what kind of place Taiwan has in Trump's mind, right? So how would Taiwan deal with this new GOP administration? Material interest matter. As you can see, immediately after Trump's election, Trump got elected, Taiwan official contacted the U.S. counterpart and with the interest to buy advanced weapon system. They come up with a very long wish list that include many things that Taiwan have wanted for years that would add up to $15 billion. Okay, that's a big number, right? So it's very big. It's a big number because it includes 60 F-35B, all right? F-35B is something that Taiwan really wants to get because in case of the airport got attacked and got eliminated, the F-35B will be able to vertically take off. But this is some kind of technology, the weapon system that U.S. refused to sell to Taiwan for years. And not surprisingly, after this news came up, the U.S. officials outrightly denied that they will sell these weapon systems to Taiwan. So, and after Trump got elected, so after the U.S. election, Lai Ching-te immediately arranged a visit to transit through Hawaii and visit the South Pacific nations. As you can see from the chart, so he would go all the way to Hawaii and then turn around and visit Marshall Island, Tuvalu, and Palau and come back. So the purpose of this trip is very obvious, right? The number one priority for Taiwan is always the United States. And Lai Ching-te's trip is trying to deliver messages to all U.S. officials that his administration is ready to contribute. His administration is ready to pay the cost, pay what Trump wants Taiwan to pay. So it is a costly signaling, all right? It tries to demonstrate a strong signal that Taiwan will be siding with the US, okay? And it is willing to put a down payment for US commitment, even if Trump is not in office yet. So Lai's administration is trying to show this strong commitment to US-Taiwan relations. On the other hand, Taiwan's private sector has long prepared. I would have to say that this time, everybody kind of know what Trump will do. They kind of know what Trump is like. So everybody is preparing for Trump. So Trump's central idea is that US must win in any context, including commercial competition. So during the election, Trump complained about Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor industry, saying that Taiwan is stealing from the US. So the semiconductor industry is ready. They know that they will face pressure to establish production line in somewhere else, maybe in the US. And the manufacturer industry knows that Trump will just accelerate the decoupling effort and force them to leave China. So they have already prepared to relocate their business to Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, and India. So in the next few years, you will see a lot of investment coming from Taiwan and more from China. Okay, those investment are not necessarily Chinese investment, but Taiwanese businessmen, Hong Kong businessmen who used to invest in China. Okay, so I would like to talk about the costly signal here. So can Taiwan make costly signals through payment and making concession on trade? Because we are currently negotiating a 21st century trade initiative with the US. And we have some progress, but there are some considerable concessions that Taiwan needs to make. Now, the problem is Taiwan do not know how much the US wants. And US, of course, the Trump administration will not say how much it needs in order to make the US to commit to Taiwan. Okay, so that's why Taiwan will nonetheless pay a very heavy price to signal its commitment. And the US industry will benefit from it. The US businessmen will benefit from it. The US regular workers will benefit from it. Right? And Trump, the Trump administration will make sure the America will win in this bargaining game. Okay, so that raises another question. If you pay such a heavy price, does that mean that you will necessarily gain what you want from the US? So will the US honor its commitment if the US government still will not go the route to stand up and say it will protect Taiwan under certain circumstances? Okay, that's the problem. Another problem that Taiwanese government may face will be the difficulties in Congress, as you can see. So because there are oppositions in the Congress that can paralyze government agenda. So the DPP will actually need to get Congress under control because it would affect the policy consistency of the government. So even if the Chinese government have a deal with the US, this deal might be rejected in the Congress, or the budget will be rejected or frozen in the Congress. And this will make the Taiwanese government very difficult to fulfill its policy commitments. So in the next few years, I don't think the U.S. role in cross-strait relations will have significant change. The U.S. is still an important actor that will maintain a dual deterrence in cross-strait relations, making sure that Beijing will not use force against Taiwan, but on the other hand, make sure Taiwan will not take the advantage to declare de jure independence. So it will irritate Beijing to use force. But the unsales will likely to continue and expand. And bilateral trade, especially investments from Taiwan to the US, will increase. Now, China already complained about arms sales to Taiwan, the US arms sales to Taiwan. So it is hard. So this is very difficult to predict how would China react to more arms sales to Taiwan when the US decided to sell more lethal or more advanced weapon to Taiwan. This is another uncertainty that can come into play in cross-strait relations. This is a research that shows if the U.S. shows more policy commitment to Taiwan, Taiwanese people are more willing to pick up the gun and defend themselves. So if I have time later, I can explain this chart for you. So here, there is a legitimate concern that we have to talk about. Now, when Trump says you must pay, and Taiwan pay the price, the problem is if I can buy your trust, if I can buy your commitment, buy your protection, can somebody else outbid Taiwan? I mean, the U.S. care about a lot of issues in the world, the Israel-Hamas war, what happens in Europe, and South Korea and Japan's security. So everybody is trying to get the attention from Trump. But how much Taiwan would have to pay in order to get Trump's attention, and how much contribution is enough? I think this will be a big game for every U.S. allies and partners in the future when everybody is trying to gain the attention from the Trump administration. So they will compete with each other basically by showing more money. And Taiwan will have to show a lot of money in order to win this bid. So Taiwan's options, as shown in the title, are very limited. Okay, Taiwan will have to pay a lot to draw Trump's attention, and what Taiwan really counts on is the bipartisan anti-China atmosphere in Washington right now, because very few congressmen have good feelings about Beijing right now. So that's why they are more willing to support Taiwan. But to the extent that the U.S. will support Taiwan militarily and intervene in cross-strait, intervene in Taiwan Strait in the event of PLA invasion, that will be another story. Okay. I think you probably heard that some people will tell you the U.S. will definitely come to the rescue. And this is what you will get from the street in Taiwan if you ask ordinary people, because people have the impression that Washington is really friendly to Taiwan. And Taiwan is so important that the U.S. cannot lose Taiwan. However, this leads to the unsinkable aircraft carrier argument. So since Taiwan is so important, it is so important in global trade, it is a major production base for semiconductor. That means the US cannot lose Taiwan. It will support Taiwan no matter what. That will create a moral hazard problem for Taiwan, for the US, sorry, for the US. So that means Taiwan can do anything it wants because it knows that the US will support Taiwan, right? So this is what the US doesn't want. Okay, this is what the U.S. would try to communicate with the Lai Ching-te administration, that you have to have self-restraint. But on the other hand, we have to think about what would Chinese think about this. How would Xi Jinping think about the U.S. position? If Xi Jinping believes that the U.S. will defend Taiwan no matter what, it shows that China's dream of unification is really not working at all. And it has no hope. He would have no hope to unify Taiwan. And that's when the cross-strait relations will be more danger, because if 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 China perceived the U.S. in this way, which is wrong, um, it will it will encourage China to have more aggressive movement in Taiwan Strait, and the U.S. may be forced to counter the Chinese aggression, and therefore a militarized conflict may occur between the two powers. So this is not what the U.S. is trying to get itself into. Okay, so looking at the future, I think there are several things that we have to keep in mind. First, we know that Taiwan is one of the issues between the U.S. and China. There were many other issues. So for the Trump administration, Taiwan might be an issue for bargaining. And the Taiwanese elites anxiously looking at the Trump administration, hoping that the Taiwan will not be not be sacrificed in the bargaining between China and the U.S. So anything that happens between China and U.S., whether it is trade dispute or China's assistance to Russia, these will be linked to the Taiwan issue. Okay. Secondly, I think the Trump administration will still send will send contradictory signals instead of ambiguous signals. People are still saying that the U.S. will try to be ambiguous in cross-strait relations. This is a yes and no, because you have to understand that the U.S. position has been very consistent. It can be ambiguous about Taiwan's sovereignty status as long as there is peace in Taiwan Strait. However, if there's somebody, whether it is Taipei or Beijing, who wants to change the status quo, the U.S. has been very clear about stopping those attempts. So the problem for the Trump administration is that it is likely to send contradictory signals from time to time. On the one hand, it will say, I think Taiwan is very important. We will protect Taiwan. We will stand by Taiwan. On the other hand, it will talk about, hey, let's talk about Taiwan. How about we can exchange some benefits, and Taiwan is part of the benefits. So it will send a contradictory signal to Beijing, and Beijing will need to clarify what Trump administration really wants. Finally, we will have to pay attention to Taiwan's domestic politics, especially if Ke Wen-je falls and TPP falls. There is a political vacuum that yet to be filled. So whether it is DPP who will fill this gap or the KNT who will fill this gap, that will be important, because this is related to what I just said, that DPP might be able to gain the control of the Congress, and it will be able to enforce the policy it wants. Now, anything that Lai Ching-te administration is trying to do inside the island, in Taiwan, that will have implications in cross-strait relations, because Beijing might see those actions as provocative, even though Taiwanese government will say this is nothing. Okay, but what I always say this. I talk about this a lot in different places. We Taiwan has an agency. Taiwan can change cross-strait relations. So if Taiwan is unrestrained by the U.S., it is a really high risk. Okay, I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Chan. I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Yeah.
You have been very frank and open, which I would say is very Taiwanese. And here I can see that the behavior of the US is sometimes appears to be unpredictable, as they have a successful democracy and you have a person who has returned after 4 years. So will he look at domestic aspects more or external considerations? And being a Taiwanese, you know that in the 1970s, when Nixon was the president, it was thanks to the Taiwan lobby in the US that the Taiwan Relations Act was passed. So the US has domestic legislation that protects Taiwan. So Taiwan could be seen as being a domestic issue that way. The Taiwan lobby over the decades has become less significant in Washington. So that way, the biggest challenge Taiwan has, more than the communists just 160 kilometers away to your north, are the 535 members in the US Congress, 435 legislators, representatives, and 100 senators. Will Donald Trump have a majority? Because, as we all know, the representatives keep changing every 2 years, but senators are there for 6 years. Maybe we have to look at 6 years as more long term. We can't have short term solutions when it comes to cross-straits issues. Also, it is interesting that when it comes to the US, what I see is Taiwan a threat when it comes to technology? As an island, you are a technocracy when it comes to being a democracy. Your leaders, whether it's the Kuomintang or the DPP Minchindang, they are highly educated. And universities and specialized institutions have contributed to Taiwan's relevance to the world when it comes to the digital world that is being constructed. Here, why I meant the US is because you had a fighter aircraft in the mid 1980s called Chinko. The whole Chinko aircraft program, fighter aircraft program, faced sanctions from the US and it had to be mothballed. Taiwan also used to have a nuclear program. This was started after the 1964 nuclear tests by China. And from 1967 till 1990s, this program continued at a very low keel because US sanctions were in force. But here the question is, China aspires for access to technologies which Taiwan has, which made me discuss with several scholars in Taiwan and also China. What do they exactly want in Taiwan? And the city which Taipei wants to discuss with, Shanghai, they were very open. They said, we don't want all of Taiwan. We just want Hsinchu. So I understood they want technology. So if they have Sinchu, they are content. So that way, Taiwan has less to worry about, but it's the technology which they are both after. Here, as I had said earlier, controversially, trilateral, yes, but this trilateral is composed of, or rather comprised of, three bilaterals: China and Taiwan, US and China, and Taiwan and US. So, how do these three bilaterals come together? They may or they may not. As regarding Trump, going through his speeches before he got elected, one notices that he is actually focused on the US economy going through a backslide. So his first target will be China. And second, when it comes to Taiwan, very fact that US defense corporates are selling billions of dollars worth of weaponry is sometimes, you could say, unusual, because it accelerates the desperation on the part of China. And when it comes to Xi Jinping, I've been telling in the classes that I take that look at Xi Jinping as a politician. Forget the Communist Party of China, as the CPC has to rename itself as Capitalist Party of China. Because ultimately it is money that motivates Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. In Taiwan's case, Taiwan has forex reserves close to $1 trillion. The question is, China, on the other hand, is pulling out its forex reserves from the United States. What will Taiwan do? Will Taiwan step in? Because that, in many ways, could be seen as insurance. Because once Taiwan invests its surplus forex in the US Federal Reserve, it actually helps the US economy get a grounding, which it feels it is losing. And here, not surprisingly, even India is, you could say, part of this whole debate that we have been having today. Why? Because Indians, are those who are there in the US, are largely skilled. They feel that in the US there are limitations being imposed. So will they come back? We have those issues to deal with. When it comes to Taiwan, I must apologize that India's trade with Taiwan is laughable. It is, I think, less than US $8 billion. And if you go into the components, we call ourselves a digital leader, but we export Indian tea and pharmaceuticals. But where do these basic, you could say, essential components of to create pharmaceuticals come from? They come from China. So it is quite complicated for us because India needs to go up the value chain for Taiwan. And yes, I must say some of my students are there with ICS, former students, and I was very happy to teach a course on cross-strait relations, where I'm sure they must have seen that I'm pro-Taiwan. Well, fair enough. I was also critical of China, but also I was seeing the difference in China. The provinces that are closest to Taiwan, Fujian, Guangdong, they have a different approach to Taiwan than the interior provinces. Somebody in Beijing thinks very differently. Somebody in Shanghai thinks differently. That is how I said, look at cross-strait relations as relations between provinces in China with Taiwan. That is an asset which you have, which the communists cannot take away from you. And what I notice is, correct me if I'm wrong, Xi Jinping is creating his own faction finally, which to me is the Zhejiang faction. And that may take shape by 2026. Why 2026? Because that is a year when the Communist Party of China's PLA turns 100 years old or young. The question here is Xi Jinping, does he have control over the PLA or are there tensions inside? Because he does not have any military background. And we can see that when it comes to the postings he has made when it comes to Xizang, Tibet. He has appointed PLA people who have actually not been in that part for long. So they have to get comfortable. At the same time, maybe I could be wrong. Within the PLA, they have lost a lot with China's economy backtracking. They are going through a very difficult phase, and his easing of investments is to appeal for Americans to invest in a country with higher interest rates when it comes to investments for a long term. And one of the biggest casualties, as you know, has been the PLA, because the PLA is also to be seen as a corporate player. They have their fingers in many pies, economic pies, and they felt that the pandemic was mishandled. That is their domestic politics, which is why I've been saying, correct me if I'm wrong, look at Xi Jinping as a politician. So is Donald Trump. Taiwan's President Lai. The problem I think he faces is the DPP is in a slight minority when it comes to the legislative UN. The question here is Taiwan should not abandon Sun Chung-shan's idea of what China should be. Legislative UN, executive UN. You have the administrative UN, and then, of course, importantly, the control UN and examination UN. There should be no going back on these fundamental principles of Sun Yat-sen. So this is where I'll stop. And I must thank you, Professor Chen, for the wonderful thought-provoking talk you gave. It will encourage several of the listeners to relook at Taiwan as a successful democracy where you are perhaps the only example in modern times where over 50 years you changed, transformed from total absolutism of Chiang Kai-shek to authoritarianism of Chiang Ching-kuo. And then DPP. You had Li Tenghui in between, but then DPP took over, and it is a totally free democracy, which other established democracies have to learn and study. And you could say elections are too few in India, a study, because you are a representative democracy, while we are an electoral democracy. It's a slight difference, but very important because I must confess, being in Delhi, the population in Delhi is more than Taiwan. So you can imagine that our democracy actually it is still sinking its roots deeper and deeper. It'll take time. So allow me to stop here. I will now hand over to Akshat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have received one question in the chat box. Ravi sir, with your permission, may I please read it out? All right. So this question is from Ms. Swayamsiddha Samal, who is a PhD scholar at JNU. She asks, how would you say factional politics within the DPP influenced Taiwan's relations with the second Trump government?
Okay, this is a very good question. Miss Salma, you really have a good understanding of Taiwanese politics. So DPP has several factions within the party, and the competition between different factions has been fierce over the years. So based on the government arrangement of Lai Ching-te's administration, you can see Lai Ching-te is trying to consolidate his own faction while giving some other factions some positions. Okay, at least for in this administration, I wouldn't say it is balanced. It is not. However, Lai Ching-te's faction is not dominating the party. Let's don't let's don't forget that Lai Ching-te has absolute control over his party. So Lai Ching-te is the leader of the party. That's for sure. So Lai Ching-te still have a lot of power within the party. But from time to time, you can see some government officials are being involved in corruption cases, bullying cases in Taiwanese politics. So these cases shows that there are some faction politics in Taiwan. As for whether it is going to affect its relations with the United States or foreign policy, I don't think that will be a major impact. Okay. As far as the the competition within the party is concerned, these factions do not have very strong differences over external affairs. So they wouldn't try to bring their agenda to foreign policy, and another faction will try to oppose it. The major problem in Taiwan's foreign policy is that whenever the Lai government is trying to propose something, maybe foreign policy, maybe defense policy, it will have the opposition parties trying to block it or try to diminish its impact. So this is the real problem that Lai Ching-te government faces, and I do think that DPP is quite united by this, and it is the all the factions within DPP will try very hard to defeat KMT and TPP in Congress in the next election. The next election is held in 2026, so I think you will see some political changes in just a few months in Taiwan. However, in terms of foreign policy, I do not think that faction politics will influence Taiwan's foreign policy.
Thank you, sir.
Chan.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm sorry, Akshat. I have a question. Yes. Question is simple. Professor Chan, we read about the former president of the KMT.
Mind you.
Yes,
Okay.
mind you. He keeps going to the mainland.
Yes.
So is he striking some deal like ECFA? Is he trying some PCFA, political cooperation framework agreement?
No, I'm afraid not. So, of course, Mind you is not representative to the government. It doesn't represent the government to talk to the mainland. Actually, DPP hates him so much that every time, so Mind you is going to mainland again, I think next year, early next year, and DPP government really publicly warn Mind you not to do something excessive. All right. The thing is, as I mentioned in my presentation, DPP is against cross-strait interaction. either it is official or non-official interactions. So even though it doesn't say that DPP will, it doesn't say the government will ban all the interactions, but these interactions, whether it is official or non-official, they will be heavily censored by the government. And the DPP supporters will also raise public outrage against those who are trying to engage with the mainland. So why Minjo is so catching our eyeball, right? Because he, of course, is the former president of the Republic of China. Also, he is one of the few people who can go to the mainland and meet with higher level officials. No other politicians in Taiwan will be able to do this right now. So, on the other hand, the pro-unification people in Taiwan, which are very few, less than 3%, they seem to put their final hope on Ma Ying-jeou, hoping that Ma Ying-jeou's trip to China will open up more cross-strait dialogue and force DPP government to commit to a better cross-strait relations. It is also KNT's hope that Ma Ying-jeou's trip will give KNT more opportunity to engage with cross-strait with the officials in mainland China. So my observation is that KNT, since Ma Ying-jeou have lost its connection with mainland. So it doesn't have the leverage to negotiate with mainland. It doesn't enjoy the privileges such as like during the Lianzhan and Song Shu's period of time when KNT and CCP members can sit down equally and discuss matters that is related to cross-strait relations. KNT right now do not have effective communication channel with mainland China. That's why Ma Ying-jeou is still very important. However, we also know that Ma Ying-jeou's trip to China and his comments on Xi Jinping actually hurt KNT's election in this year's presidential election. Ma Ying-jeou said something I would say a little bit inappropriate that would make people believe that KNT is pro-unification, pro-Xi Jinping. And you know Xi Jinping is not very popular in Taiwan, as you can imagine. So Ma Ying-jeou's statement just before the election actually hurt KNT's election. So this is something that I think KNT will be very careful in the future. But on the other hand, I would say Ma Ying-jeou will continue his trip to China, try to build relations with China because he might be the last person who is able to connect higher ranking officials in China.
Thank you. Yes. Akshat?
Yes, sir. So while we wait for more questions in the chat box, with your permission, may I please ask one or two questions? Sir, one thing that we understand from your presentation is that there is a lot of uncertainty regarding Trump's actions and potential actions and decisions. And since I studied Japan, there has been a lot of murmurs, in the LDP regarding potential actions or decisions by Trump. However, in the case of allies such as Japan, South Korea, there still exist treaties which essentially obligate American intervention in a dire situation. But in the case of Taiwan, such a treaty does not exist. What we have is a Taiwan Relations Act. So what I really mean to ask is, can we truly see the TRA as legislation that could quote unquote obligate American intervention? And leading from this, do we also see Lai Ching-te try, attempt to bring in policy measures that would bring in a more decisive American commitment towards Taiwan security? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I think Japan and South Korea, and especially European allies, are pretty worried about US commitment to their security in the future, especially for NATO members when Trump says that they gotta pay, otherwise the US can withdraw from NATO, right? So essentially, the Trump administration will pose a fear for abandonment for these US allies. So as you might know, in the alliance literature, this is a legitimate concerns for allies. So the problem is there will be more alliance management efforts coming from South Korea or Japan trying to maintain the ties with the United States. And as I said, to maintain the ties with the United States, you have to pay, you have to contribute, you have to show that you are responsible for your security. You cannot override the U.S. efforts. So these countries will have to contribute more to its own defense. Meanwhile, you can think about the result of that contribution. If U.S. allies are more capable of defending itself, would it need the United States? How much it would need the United States? This is exactly what happens in Europe when France might try to urge European autonomy on their security, right? And this might happen when Trump got into office. As for what it means for Taiwan, now we should know that even though there is a Deterrence Relations Act, it doesn't promise that U.S. will intervene in Taiwan Strait. So there is always a fear among Taiwanese people that the U.S. will abandon Taiwan. And during the Biden administration, the ordinary Taiwanese people's confidence on the U.S. intervention in Taiwan Strait is pretty high. As I said, the confidence is pretty high. They all believe that the Biden administration will come to Taiwan's rescue. As if we come to the Trump administration when material interest is more important, it is hard to say that Taiwanese people will have the same confidence on the U.S. Now, if Taiwan cannot count down the U.S., the problem is there are no one to count down. If Taiwan has no one to count down, it would have to negotiate with the U.S. Now, the DPP government will not negotiate with China. And the DPP government will not negotiate with China, of course. However, if Trump's administration do not give obvious or strong commitment to Taiwan's security, the Taiwanese people may be driven to ask the government to open dialogue with China. That's the possible outcome. I'm not saying that it will happen, but I do think that the Trump administration will not give a very strong commitment, very clear commitment to Taiwan security, because for Trump, this is something he needs to negotiate with the Taiwanese government. So I don't think Trump will be very clear about defending Taiwan. And this time, even though his cabinets will have high-ranking officials who are friendly to Taiwan, I do not think that they will publicly endorse Taiwan's security. Okay, because this will be against Trump's policy. I think the U.S. will remain ambiguous about what it will do in case of PLA invasion, but it will still say, all right, Taiwan security is very important. Taiwan should be able to self-defense, things like that. So the Trump administration will try to make China to guess the U.S. will do in the case of POA invasion. So whether Lai can get a decisive support from the U.S., this is what Lai government would try to do. I don't think the government can easily get the decisive support from the U.S. Like I said, if you are the U.S. government and your goal is try to secure as much benefit as possible, you will not easily come to the bait. Taiwan will get a load of cash, load of money to the U.S. and say, hey, you have to show your commitment publicly that you will protect Taiwan's security. But the U.S. will not easily say this, okay? Unless I must stress, unless there is obvious aggression from Beijing, unless there is the sign of military operation from Beijing, because this will be breaking the status quo unilaterally, and this is something that the U.S. will not allow. This is against the U.S. interest. So the U.S. main goal is still to maintain the status quo in Taiwan Strait, while making sure that Taiwan is leaning to the U.S. This is related to the earlier comment about whether China wants what China wants from Taiwan. So I think China wants more than Hsinchu. I think China wants more than Taiwan's technology. China wants more than Taiwan's talent. China really wants political legitimacy, because Taiwan is a legitimacy issue for CCP. We cannot ignore that. You think about this. How many issues in the world can really make Xi Jinping sleepless? How many issues in the world can really threaten Xi Jinping's position? Taiwan is that one issue. Okay, his political opponent, he will use Taiwan issue to attack him. So Taiwan is an important political issue for CCP members. No matter who is in charge, I think this will be an important thing, important symbolic value for China. As for whether Xi Jinping have good control of his military, because the member of the Central Military Committee, Miao Hua, was arrested a couple of weeks ago. So people are guessing that Xi Jinping is losing control of his military. My observation is on the contrary. So I think Xi Jinping is trying to get rid of people who are not listening to him or not loyal to him. And this is what happens in political purge, right? You purge most of your political rival, and what is left are elites that really rely on you. I do agree that Xi Jinping is trying to raise his own factions and trying to get rid of Hu Wen's factions and Jiang Zeming's faction. The result of it is that there are fewer and fewer people around Xi Jinping. This is another dangerous situation for Chinese decision makers. If you don't have good advisors, if you don't have experienced politicians, if you concentrate the power of decision making on one person too much, and with no counterbalancing, the uncertainty of policy making will be bigger. So you, so that's why Washington is increasingly unable to understand what the Chinese elites are thinking. And so does the Chinese elite. So does Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping might not understand fully what the Western leaders are thinking. That will be another danger under this age of confrontation.
Thank you so much, sir. As we come close to the end of the seminar, I now hand over the floor to Professor Narayanan.
Yes. Thank you, Akshat. Thank you, Professor Chen Pingwei. Yes, Taiwan. It just takes me back to the books that one has read at the wonderful Chanchatashrei Tushukwan about the history of Taiwan, how during the Cold War, the 1954 Cross-Strait crisis happened, 1958 again, and 1971, when very surprisingly, the US abandoned Taiwan. And a country that was a member of the UN Security Council was literally shown the door. And you had the People's Republic of China taking over. Since then, things have changed. So have American presidents. What remains is Taiwan. And what is interesting to a person who is based in India is the Taiwanese construct that is happening, where, yes, as a people, everybody is Chinese, but the original inhabitants were from Southeast Asia and Philippines. Also, some say Indonesia, but they are just less than 3% of the population. Rest are Fujianese and also Guangdong. They have created a separate Taiwanese identity, and the future belongs to today's youth. Thankfully, as a democracy, you don't have a party saying you should have only one child. In Taiwan, you can have children. There is no restriction. As a country that I have seen and lived for several years, the democracy is so open that several of my students who have studied with me, who have gone to Taiwan, have asked me, "Sir, why did you come back?" I just give a very embarrassed smile, which in Chinese would be "Hua Wis." That's it. And this is Taiwan to John, not just me, all those who have established themselves there. And I'm sure that many people in India will start visiting Taiwan more often as tourists. Hopefully, I just hope they are watching this on YouTube. Because to a person like me, I used to look forward to the weekends. Why? So that especially when the temperature these days is now quite low, I used to love going to the hot springs. The hot springs to soak the hot water and take a nice leisurely bath for 40 minutes, and then one is told that don't expose yourself to the sodium vapors. After that, one goes to the nearby place to eat. And that used to be very joyful, not only for me, also my wife. And I've promised my little daughter that when she grows up, Taiwan is the first place you should go. But good news, she was just a month old when she came to Taiwan. She, of course, doesn't remember. I show her pictures of the places where we had gone with her in a basket. Yes, we carried her in a basket. And here, yes, we are on YouTube. But I must say that that particular basket in which she was carried was made in India. And that is the northeastern state called Nagaland, which is famous for its bamboo products. So that way, Taiwan appeals personally and also professionally. Those students who have gone to learn the language, they have come back totally stunned by the efficiency of educational institutions and also simple traffic rules being obeyed, simple things, and how people always have a smile. And of course, the food, which is your soft diplomacy. I hope someday your department focuses on encouraging soft diplomacy through cuisine. Anyway, beyond that, I really enjoyed your talk. And here in full public view, I'm asking you, can I send you questions by mail?
Yeah.
So you can take your
of course.
time to reply, no problem.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll do that. And also, the PPT you have prepared, could you please send it to the ICS?
Sure. I updated this afternoon, so I'll send the updated version to ICCS, to Akshat.
Sure. Thanks, because it will help us in our education. Because Taiwan, when students ask me questions, I have no answers to some questions like women's rights in Taiwan. What do I say? Second is Taiwan a constitutional republic? I say yes, but then why doesn't the democratic world recognize Taiwan? I said, well, Taiwan finds another way, and that is through the WTO. Most countries have no hesitation in trading with Taiwan, but they're hesitant in declaring political recognition. So they have to go to the library and check what did Sir say by this. Also, legislative democracy. Yes, Taiwan is a legislative democracy. Also, our university, I'm sorry, my former university, I remember that when it was a National Day, October 10th, Shi Yue, Shi Hao. And on that day, students from Chanchitachwe used to go around the statue of Chiang Kai-shek. And they used to go around the statue, and being a democracy, they also used to throw eggs on that statue of Chiang Kai-shek.
They still do.
Yes. And I was shocked because those days I used to walk the entire hill to stay fit, then go to the swimming pool down, and then go. And I used to go and eat in the nice restaurants nearby. And my favorite, I hope that place is still there. It used to be a Japanese restaurant, Shabu Shabu.
No, it's gone, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is your place. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't get too personal here. I thank you very much for telling us about cross-strait relations and the role of the United States with Donald Trump. And all that I'd like to say before ending is my assessment of Donald Trump in one word: unpredictable.
Yep. That's what people will be saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Akshat.
Thank you.
I have to stop here. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. And with this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We are highly grateful to Professor Chan-Ping Kuei and Dr. Ravi Prasad Narayanan for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS's YouTube channel very shortly. The ICS conducts seminars every Wednesday, and further information regarding the topics can be found on our website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.